that is how important Manipur is. Manipur is like a permanent buffer zone right now. It's become a buffer zone in the sense that we can talk about it, we can discuss that, these tribes are like doing this and that. Are these people tribals? Are these people not tribals? In the context of the Meiteis, we can talk about neutral journalism, whatever it is that we want to talk about. But at the end of the day, the fact that everybody is suffering the consequences of journalism that isn't for the people, that isn't about truth telling, is the truth. Thank you to everybody who thought I'm worthy of this award. Bharat Bhushan sir, I happened to have seen him and met him for the first time while I was in Manipur when the Editors Guild team had visited Manipur. That was when I had interacted with him. And after that, pretty much, I have been like completely off the radar in the sense that Manipur is completely cut off. Internet came back around September-ish, but it's like in patches, the network is pretty bad. But I've just been off. But at this point, now that, there is an opportunity for me to look back on my work, not just in the context of Manipur, but in the context of journalism itself that, I have tried to like practice. I've tried to understand where is it that I see myself, or where is it that I understand my work is at the moment, as a journalist. I don't know if a lot of people know, but I'm actually a lawyer. I was very keen to be, a good trial lawyer. I wanted to practice only criminal law at one point, and I was very, very actively working towards becoming a good trial lawyer in Bangalore. When a friend of mine who runs this YouTube channel called Dalit Camera said there is this thing happening in Una. Since you're the only one who knows Hindi, which I didn't know so much, why don't you go and cover what's happening in Una? Y'all are aware of what happened in Una in 2016. And that's actually like inaccurate because not everybody in Gujarat speaks Hindi. Hardly people in Gujarat speak Hindi. So I went to Gujarat to cover the assertion, whatever followed the violence that the family in Mota Samadiyala faced. There was a lot of assertion, a lot of organizing around, what had happened there. And this was a very small community. It was only 5 to 6% of Gujarat, the Dalit community of Gujarat. And there was a lot of mobilizing that they did, which of course wasn't coming out, which wasn't being shared actively. So I was told to go and cover it, for a YouTube platform, and we had social media pages as well. So that's where my journey started. And when it started, one incident that I starkly remember is when there was this 10-day rally that was planned from Ahmedabad to Una. And just the day before it was supposed to end, there was this crazy mobilization of Gaurakshaks, right? Because this whole thing was around this carcass, this cow carcass, which these people were skinning. And about the whole allegation was that they had killed that cow. And on the 10 days, there was this yatra which was taken out for 10 days saying that we will no longer do caste occupations. And just one day before this yatra was to conclude, there was this mobilization of Gaurakshaks right before Una. And the entire group that was going towards Una took a different route. All these cars of NDTV and Times Now and all of them are parked right at the brink of the place where, all these Gaurakshaks had mobilized. They had mobilized in thousands. And me and a colleague, a friend of mine, Amit, another journalist, we were like, let's just go ask them what is it that they're up to. So we went right into the crowd of Gaurakshaks, like women and men and all of them. And we were like, what do you want? Like, what's your deal? They're doing a yatra. What is it? You're at fault, right? What is your problem? And we are just like journalists. We are just kids. We just want to understand what your deal is. And then they go into this whole tirade about, Gai meri maa hai, and Dalit Muslim bye-bye, to Savarnon ka kya hoga, Savarnon ko peace diya hai Rajkiyon ne, something and all. There's a huge thing, but we got all of that on camera and we were like, wow, we got something. We thought we got a video where, there is one side that isn't speaking, where they're openly saying that we will beat these people up. We picked up that video just as we finished that interview, which spanned around 15 minutes. A stampede broke out. We had to run. And I just thought, both of us, me and Amit, thought that we had this very nice video that we can send to our editors. And in 10 minutes, we were followed and our bike was hit and we flew, and it was pretty dramatic in the sense that I was badly hurt. And yet we continued to complete the yatra. We finished shooting the yatra. And then a friend of mine, another journalist, Sudipto, said, dude, don't do, be a little less dramatic. Don't do your heroics when you're dealing with such crowds, because it's not going to help you move forward in journalism. But I think back from then till now, somehow feels like everything is dramatic about doing any kind of journalism in this country. And it's really bad. The state of affairs is so bad that basic stuff that we are doing is being called dramatics. It's being called like stuff that I can't honestly imagine, in the sense that, I mean, more journalists should have been in Manipur, right? It shouldn't have been just a few of us, because what is happening in Manipur, what happened and what is happening in Manipur is, it's an experiment that is taking a new color every day. And the manner in which it's turning out every other day is, it's not scary. It's that an entire population of people, doesn't have to be Kuki, Meitei, Naga, what. They're all inconsequential to a lot of people, including the government and journalists and mainstream society, whatever it is that you want to call it. So more people had to be interested in this, and that was something, because I prefer reporting about the South. I want to only report about the South. Most of my writing before Manipur was about, in fact, the 18-part series that Sir mentioned, it was about my region of Tulu Nadu, right? It was about what is it that's going wrong in that region that I really was interested in, because my family was involved, people close to are involved, and you ask difficult questions in those spaces. And that's when you come to a conclusion, and that's the space that I wanted to work in. But what was happening in Manipur was crazy in May, and we weren't getting information. And when we started receiving more and more inputs about sexual violence, then some of us thought we had to step in. That's how it started with Manipur. But, kind of coming out of that, I just want to take a detour and speak a little bit about why is it that I thought it was important for me to go to Manipur. So, I am a 90s kid, and there's a lot of talk about what being a 90s kid means. People are like, 90s kids don't get married, 90s kids aren't responsible, 90s kids, don't care so much. All of these things there's a lot of generalization of what being a 90s kid is. But I feel like the most important aspect of being a 90s kid is that in 92, a year and a half after I was born, Babri Masjid happened. And while I was in school, none of us knew what Babri Masjid is. It wasn't discussed so much. The year that I was born is where protests around Mandal happened, the implementation of Mandal reforms. The thing is that was discussed a lot as I was growing up. I remember the anti-reservation sentiment that was there in our country, it kind of grew with my generation, where people thought it was cool to talk about, what reservation meant or what it didn't mean. And the protests against Mandal happened in 1990. By the time I was, a lawyer, and, I was also actively writing, which is 2016, is when Rohit Vemula left us. So from 90, where people started speaking about reservation in a certain way, to 2016, why had nothing changed to kind of affirm to this country that caste is one of the biggest things that needs to be reported on, grounded. We need to be grounded in the fact that we are deeply casteist in every way possible. Instead, what was happening? While I graduated from law school, I did my law in Mangalore. And in Mangalore, things had changed drastically since my parents had been children. And since, when I graduated in 2013, I was told that my people don't have so much to do with Hinduism. But I was told that I am Hindu, and another ethnic community, similar to Tuluas or Beri, are Muslim. And the main thing that we have to do is go against each other. This is how it had, turned out into the society that I come from. This is what they were talking about. They were talking about love jihad in a region where we have an indigenous deity whose father is Beri and mother is a Tulu woman. We come from a region like that, and that region, you're talking about love jihad, you're talking about Muslims being outsiders, where Muslims speak a language called Beri, which is a Dravidian language. So it had come to the state where this is the language that you're talking about, when it comes to Hindu and Muslim, but there's no talk about caste. This is the situation in which I enter journalism. I start doing journalism, and I realized that if I'm in mainstream spaces, I can speak about communalism in the context of Hindu-Muslim. But I can't speak about cultural nationalism that the RSS does. And who does that cultural nationalism, I can't speak about. If I'm speaking about caste, I'll have to speak about it only about atrocities. I can't speak about assertion, because while I was in Gujarat, I saw people flinging carcasses of dead cows into government offices as a response to Una. That is something that I saw with my eyes. And it didn't come in mainstream channels. It didn't come in mainstream news. It wasn't reported. Some regional channels picked it up, but that kind of assertion wasn't. And this was happening in Gujarat. And I'm from the south. I was brought up in Tamil Nadu, and I hadn't seen something like that. So I understood that for me to do the journalism that I think is the most important journalism, I have to be an outlier. You know, I can't do, like, whatever I do will not be considered as mainstream by mainstream journalists or mainstream journalism spaces. I'll have to continue to be an outlier where, you know, I decide that this is what I'll talk about, so I'll have to speak in these spaces. Those spaces will also be speaking about the most important issues, like, you know, I write for the Caravan. Caravan speaks about and lets me do investigative pieces about issues that other outlets will never let me speak about, and yet they are considered as, you know what, I mean, you know what the treatment with Caravan is right now. So to do the journalism that is the most important at this moment, you have to be an outlier. Because there has been a certain trend that journalism has had in this country where the most important issues have been considered as issues which are issues of the marginalized, which are issues of, you know, alternate whatever media, alternate issues, whatever you want to call it. That is how it has been. Because from 1990, where Mandal happened, to 2016, if it wasn't driven in our head, you know, it wasn't driven in our psyche that caste, I mean, I'm speaking in my lifetime, right? It wasn't driven in our psyche that caste is what is the most important issue right now, be it in institutions, be it in any space, be it even in the media, then what are we even talking about, right? So right now, from 2016 to now, I've realized that things are pretty much the same. Journalism is bad, it's the same. You know, we are still struggling to talk about what's most important, and that's where we come to Manipur. It's only because I am an outlier that I decided, or I had to go to Manipur, right? Because if mainstream journalists had decided, if mainstream spaces had decided that this is an important issue, they would have been in Manipur in the first week of May. Everything that happened after that wouldn't have happened, maybe, I don't know. Because so much happened after May. Even now there's so much happening in Manipur, and yet, how are we talking about Manipur? The fact that this country doesn't think that two women experiencing what they did, which we all saw visually, which the world saw, wasn't important enough to stop a war, wasn't important enough to dethrone, or whatever you want to call it, the CM, whoever it is in the state administration, it wasn't important enough, shows where we think about not only tribal women, but also women in this country. That's one thing. Second thing, that is how important Manipur is. Manipur is like a permanent buffer zone right now. It's become a buffer zone in the sense that we can talk about it, we can discuss that, you know, these tribes are like doing this and that. Are these people tribals? Are these people not tribals? In the context of the Meiteis, we can talk about neutral journalism, whatever it is that we want to talk about. But at the end of the day, the fact that everybody is suffering the consequences of journalism that isn't, you know, that isn't for the people, that isn't about truth telling, is the truth. And I would like to end with that. Thank you.